for today's Pivot in Progress workshop, which we are going to do on leveraging content and community to grow in today's AI powered landscape. So, my name is Arjun, and I have two really good speakers on this particular topic who have a wealth of experience in content, community, and using those to shape very delightful experiences for large communities. We will be ensuring that the conversation stays very relevant to what is happening in the AI powered landscape today. So without further ado, let me bring them on stage with us. All right. Okay, welcome Piali and Vaishnavi once again. Good to have you both here. How are you doing?
Oh, well, thank you. Just waiting for winter to get over. Other than that, all good. It's not my favorite month.
So I imagine you're in somewhere in the north right now, Delhi.
I'm in Delhi. I'm in Delhi. So
Yes.
we're just waiting for the little spring that we have sometimes.
Yeah.
Clearer.
This has been a frigid winter across the globe. I spent part of my time in US. What I've heard is like the East Coast is below 0 degrees
Yeah.
for the last 1 month, and I think Delhi is trending that way. I hope it gets warmer. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Piali, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Really excited for this conversation. I'm in Bangalore, so we are lucky to have great weather through the year, and I think this year we've actually had a winter.
Hmm.
So we've had a couple of days where we've seen colleagues wear a jacket and a sweater and things like that. Normally we don't have a winter, but yeah, winter's been really pleasant, and I hope that this weather stays. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. So we have people from all three metro cities in India, myself being in Mumbai. But thank you so much for making time for this both. I think this is a very exciting time to be in the space that you both are in. There's just so much happening, not just within the content and community space, but the impact that AI and certain other business model disruptions and evolutions that are happening in this area. So yeah, I'm super excited. We get a lot of questions from our pivot community around how they can grow their careers, how they can make greater impact in the space. So we'll dive right in. Before we do that, just a quick round of intros perhaps. I would go first, and then I would turn it over to Vaishnavi and Piali for sharing their background as well. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Arjun and I'm the founder at Pivot. What we do is help people achieve inflection points in their careers more seamlessly and successfully. So, anytime a person is thinking about changing not just their domain or their industry, but sometimes even leveling up their career, going from manager to leadership roles, that's really where we are most effective. And we have a bunch of solutions that we provide to that end, which we'll discuss during the course of this conversation. But very excited to have Piali and Vaishnavi here. So I'll turn it over to Piali first. Piali, welcome again. And if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and what you do today, that would be great.
Right. So my journey started over 19 years ago, actually with the media, where I started my career uh, right after my master's. And I was a fashion journalist for about the first 5.5 years of my career, mainly spent with the Times of India and the Times Group. That exposure, I would like to believe gave me the strong foundation in content that I've benefited from hugely, right? Because content right after sort of blew up as far as, marketing is concerned. And after about a little more than half a decade in the media, at the time that India was sort of right at the sort of I would say the beginning of the digital revolution that we saw much, later on, and e-commerce had just started coming into the country and so on. I switched over to the brand side and I moved to Mintra to head content. Post that with Amazon to head social media for Amazon Fashion. Post which I did a stint on the agency side because I realized that I had not done an agency stint at all, and that exposure was very very important to get a holistic sense of marketing and how that works. After which, and by then I had done about 12 years of fashion across media and agencies, brands, etc. After which I decided to take a break from fashion and delved deep into a very, very interesting category. And which is senior living, which is really where I spent about 5.5 years building a brand from zero to about taking it to 500 crores, and eventually
Oh, wow.
helping the brand exit. It saw a very, very successful exit and was one of the in fact, the largest senior living brand in India, Columbia Pacific. So it was really a zero to sort of building role. And then it's now just been about 8 months at Sattva. And so far, it's been about really defining what brand Sattva should stand for, doing a lot of groundwork on that, and obviously helping the business grow across the various cities that the brand is present in. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, a lot of, I think, different turns and twists in the journey, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot from that experience. Thanks for sharing that, Piali. Vaishnavi, I think I've known you perhaps for almost 4 years now, starting from your journey at LinkedIn, and now you're at Reddit. So I would love to know a little bit more for the benefit of our audience. What has been your career journey and where you are today?
100%. Thank you. I think I still remember the moment where I reached out to you for a LinkedIn News India story about helping people pivot their careers. I think I've been so excited about the mission that you have rallied behind. I started my career off in publishing, in fact. So I've had a very clear pivot, which is difficult because I went from publishing, which is more traditional, to a platform like LinkedIn. And but I think what it taught me at that point was just how do you sort of grasp a lot of skills on the job to kind of make that pivot. So that's a little bit about me from that point of view. But just to give a few more details, hard to top what Piali just talked about. I love that experience that you just shared with us. I started off as a publicist in publishing and then graduated to heading digital, which meant many, many things. It meant social media, but it also meant any digital product. So whether it was a production of an audiobook or to make sure that a book was converted into a TV series or a movie. I was also working on those IP rights with Netflix, Hotstar, Applause Entertainment, and many other production houses, and doing the similar work for Southeast Asia as well. Author management was a huge part of it, which made me pivot to LinkedIn in creator management. And now I am working at a company where the product itself is communities. So I think that's been my 10 to 11 years worth of experience. And as a history graduate, I think it was always very interesting to stay curious about the world. And now I think that curiosity is showing how we show up in communities, how we show up with our content, and that's where I am now today.
Amazing, amazing. Great. All right. So I think we have in Piali more of a person who has had like 360-degree marketing experience with a lot of focus on, I think, content, community building as well. And Vaishnavi, I think you've had sort of a career pivot starting from publishing to then creator management, which focus more on content, best practices, and now more in community. So I think I couldn't have thought of two better people for this particular topic, because it's good to get perspective both from a somebody who has a 360-degree view and somebody who's more specializing in these areas. But let's get started. So the first thing that I want to just talk about is there has been almost a paradigm shift in how content has been created over the last especially 2 years, since tools, the Gen AI tools like GPT, Claude, and all came on the scene. And there has also been an explosion in not just good content but what they call AI slop, which is not so good content, right? Before we get into the specifics of what's good, what's bad, I just want to understand, like, from your experience in the trenches, what are the biggest factors that are creating this paradigm shift right now in content primarily, um, which lead to either better or worse outcomes for companies? So Piali, we'll start with you. If you could share, according to your experience, what are some of the biggest changes you have seen in the last couple of years that have led to this content revolution?
Yeah. So, you see, nothing I would say right now is not known to people, right? I think what we're seeing is an absolutely overwhelming amount of content. It's what I like to call a content avalanche. I mean, it's the kind of content that I think we have not seen before, but also just the volume from a user perspective is tremendously overwhelming, right? I think I was reading somewhere that on any given day you get bombarded with about 5,000 pieces of content, right? Now, with AI, obviously that compounds because the access to content and the production of that content becomes a lot more democratic in nature, right? Now, what happens is when there are a lot of rich people, in a community, let's say, the only way somebody would stand out is if that person is richer, right? Because amongst rich people, how do you really, I mean, everybody else is rich, so how do you really stand out? Similarly, when there's just too much of content and all of it is really I mean, I generated. So if I look at a category like, for example, real estate or anything like that, you look at the average ads that you get targeted with, it's all AI. You can figure that out, right? Now, the point is, then it's really about a bunch of AI content that the same customer is sort of consuming, right? And then the challenge really is how do you, A, bring in the human touch, B, stay within the brand guidelines and the guardrails, which I think is the most difficult challenge, and protect the brand as any custodian is expected to do. And three, how do you really elevate the quality of that content? Because in the bid to become democratic, I think what we have lost is control over quality, right? So just a lot of really average content kind of gets generated, and that includes all of us, right? And then that content is basically competing against other average AI generated content. So if I look at it from, let's say, both from an engagement point of view as well as from performance marketing point of view, right? From an engagement point of view, which is, let's say, for me, social media, where my intent is not to really sell but to build a community, right? I'm using AI, so is my competitor, so is every other category out there, which may or may not be allied to my category and therefore has a similar kind of audience. And so, how do I really ensure that my content stands out even though everybody else has access to exactly the same tools, right? I think is the challenge. The second thing I think is that what I've sort of noticed is that this pivot, and I would want to bring in pivot to AI, happened pretty fast for us, right? It sort of blew up on our faces. Even if I just, look at it purely from a marketing standpoint, but even otherwise, in general, the pivot to AI from human sort of happened so fast that I don't think we spend enough time training our teams, training ourselves, investing enough time in our talent to not only be able to use the tools, which I don't think is such a hard one to crack, but how do you use those tools effectively in order to really create a voice and not compromise quality in a bid to chase
Right.
efficiency, cost efficiency, manpower efficiency, scale, all of that is something that AI will of course guarantee, and it is. But the big question is on quality, right? So I
Yeah.
can produce a lot of the same thing, and I can say that yes, I've scaled up. So earlier I was doing maybe about 60 ads a day. Today I'm able to do 600 because of AI. But are those 600 eventually performing?
Right.
And that's something that I think now we need to get into. That's the second phase of this sort
Yeah,
of
the ROI
revolution, right?
aspect of that
Yes,
600.
I think that's the second phase. I think the first phase was really about scaling up, bringing efficiency, bringing manpower and time. I mean, time efficiency, which I think we're past that stage now because everybody's now realized we've all gotten comfortable with the tools, etc. But I think now the second phase of this, this era that we're in the midst of is to really understand whether we are adding to the noise and
Mhm.
we're adding to the clutter which already did exist, and I don't think it needed any more addition,
Hmm.
or are we using a tool intelligently to, do something that is truly differentiated as well for our brand, while not compromising on the brand storytelling and what the brand really stands for?
Right.
Because look, AI is a tool. It's here to stay. Tomorrow, something more disruptive will come our way, but brands take decades to build,
Yeah.
and it takes just a couple of months to dilute it. I've seen that happen with many brands. Change of
Sure.
management gets completely diluted. The proposition, the positioning, everything,
Yeah, no,
and I
all
think
fantastic points, Piali. I just want to bring in Vaishnavi quickly into
absolutely,
the
yeah.
conversation as well. I think Vaishnavi, the points that he was highlighting, I feel like very critical points in terms of leveraging AI very meaningfully and mindfully, as opposed to just scaling it up while compromising quality and ROI. Um, I know you are currently working for community oriented platform, but I'm sure like your experiences before that, as well as today, where on that community platform, there's a lot of content being created that I'm sure you're engaging with or helping scale up. Can you talk from your experience, not just about the impact that AI has had on content, but what has been some new, perhaps even unintended consequences which have led to people creating better content? In the sense that I'm sure AI was an enabler, but as Piali rightly pointed out, it created many more blockers in terms of quality. So can you talk about like what are you seeing where creators and companies are realizing they need to change strategies to really
I mean, I think I understood what Arjun was hoping to say. So maybe, Pyali, I'm just going to talk to you while Arjun joins. Okay, cool. Yes, I think if I've understood, Arjun, do you want to finish your thought?
No, if you heard me, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Because I see AI, I believe very strongly that it should help us do more of the right things and less of the wrong things. Like, I think it should be a tool that helps us do things. I'm not wary of it. I think in my previous roles as well, we were encouraged to use it in a sense of, just when it's powerful when it helps you, like, automate some of the parts that you otherwise would spend a lot of time doing it. But as a community professional, I also believe that AI can create content, but it cannot create community. It cannot create belonging. And that can only be generated through like-minded people coming together and sharing what they're passionate about, what they're interested in a forum. And that's why I always want to separate community with audiences, because a lot of platforms focus on the audience, but whereas in my current role, I know that the power of people coming together about a certain topic, they can identify AI from 5 miles away. Like, we see redditors being super smart about this. So I think the brands who are using AI need to kind of keep front and center the humanity of their campaigns, because otherwise uh, you're not going to stand out from all that noise that Piali rightly pointed out. That I think if your voice is not staying opinionated, or the content still sounds like it came from someone like who has been programmed to write that, people can identify it. And I think even at LinkedIn in my previous role, whenever we had to decide that, hey, listen, whose post are we going to amplify, we really wanted to bring our editorial eyes to that piece of content and see if it's coming from ChatGPT or Gemini, or is it really that person's own thought. Now, that own thought can, of course, be built in. I'm not telling anybody, I will never say that to shy away from using AI where it can help you, where it can help you develop a thought, but to entirely depend on that because, the volume is higher and it's cheaper. I think the humanity of it, the human angle would never be taken away. I think that's what we are seeing more and more, especially on Reddit. I think Steve Hoffman, our CEO, also like kind of said in one of the interviews as well, that Reddit is probably the last place on the internet where people are actually hoping to find real user reviews. So your Google searches are basically like, how do I do this? Reddit, or review of this product, Reddit, as a keyword towards the end, to actually find people who have used that product, have experienced it, and can share it with everybody else. So I'm excited by AI in the sense of like, it helping to do the less of wrong things, so like to help your grammar or figure out your white spaces or your blind spots. But I think that one to many passive kind of engagement is probably going away more. And I'm now seeing more interactions where even creating on LinkedIn means that you're creating community. You're not really doing it just to kind of just post in the abyss of the internet. You're really just wanting to find those like-minded people who can engage with you very meaningfully. And I'm seeing that more and more on platforms like LinkedIn and Reddit as well.
I think a lot of great points there, especially with regard to how community has become much more important in today's times, because that's something that's much more still very human centric, as opposed to bots taking over, or something where you can scale but not really lead to quality outcomes. Like, you can't scale a community if people are not getting value out of it, right? That's the only reason people would join an actual community. Let's stay on the topic of quality content for a second, because I think that is one of the biggest topics which a lot of marketers are having to deal with today. It's talked about frequently, but I don't think anybody has really figured it out yet. Like, how to actually leverage AI in a way. We're not just producing a lot of slop, you're experimenting in an efficient manner. And you're actually, like Piali, you were talking about, you're actually not adding more to the noise, but you're trying to build only content which would resonate and drive value for your community and for your brand. um, so the specific question that I have here is, Piali, what do you think, what kind of content really stands out when, somebody can produce something in a few seconds? And many times we have seen that even AI produced content has gone viral, especially when people created something really different, something very unique, um, and said that, I created this with the help of, let's say, Nano Banana or some other AI tool. It has gotten virality at times as well. So there are definitely overlaps in content being created through AI and without AI, which is still standing out and catching people's attention. So what are those overlapping elements according to you which make content stand out in today's age?
So number one is voice, right? As a brand, you must stand for something, and you must have a very, very distinct voice. I think there has never been a, a sharper focus on voice than today, because of the amount of noise that there is, right? The second thing, and this is oft quoted, and I'm sure everybody here on this panel is going to agree. And it's cliched, but it's true, that you've got to be authentic, right? Today more than ever, you've got to be authentic. There is no compromise on that. I mean, if you've goofed up as a brand, you've goofed up as a brand, and you better own up. And if you can't, then you would be ripped apart, as you should. And today, that is just going to be amplified. That's just one part of being authentic. But also, are you as a brand walking the talk? So any communication that you create really, really needs to be in sync with what your practices are across customer touch points, across people practices, ESG goals, for example. You've really got to be a brand that walks the talk, because you see, it's a glass bowl living today, right? I mean, everybody is constantly under scrutiny, and the reason why that is so is because today information is available so easily, right? You could talk about sustainability in your campaign, for instance, and that's our favorite topic, as you know, as marketers, to kind of latch onto that. That's the new it thing. But how authentic is that piece of communication going to be if, as a brand, you've not really done much on your ESG goals at all, right? You don't really have much to really talk about. You don't have practices that are aligned to that, right? So which is probably a good segue into the next point, which is about being less trend driven, but more specific to what your audience already knows you for, and more aligned to that. And you know kind of being true to that sense of what sets you apart from the rest, right? I think that's really, really, really important today. I think also it's about realizing that, um, because of the kind of, um, the because of the ecosystem that's sort of, gotten created, which is really so much about chasing virality, and which is also something that often creates a lot of pressure on marketing teams, both on the client side as well as the agency side, because often it is going to be about ये campaign viral होगा कि नहीं होगा, kind of a conversation, and that's really all you're chasing. It's really about also thinking long term, I think, today, right? It's really about thinking beyond virality and trying to say that, okay, I've cracked that viral moment, but eventually what have I sort of taken away from that, right? And how has that sort of, in some way or the other, contributed to my overall brand journey, right? Whatever that may be. So I think those are things to really, think about, and today more than ever, I'd say.
Got it. Vaishnavi, I mean, I think a lot of great, wealth of insights there from Piali. I have a particular question, which I don't know if you have gotten this before because of your particular background, but we have actually seen this happen. So, people who may not be in traditional content creation, but are in allied fields or adjacent fields, like let's say publishing, right? Most, I would say, traditional form of content creation, which is not categorized as such, but it has been like that for decades now. And there may be other, media oriented industries. Like we have people who have spent a career in film and TV and those kind of media platforms, also thinking about transitioning more into marketing oriented roles or utilizing content and community to market their, the media products. So if you can share perhaps, how does content and community today play a role for folks who are either, trying to pivot their careers from traditional media content roles, like publishing, for example, or film and TV, or perhaps leverage content and community which is so organically part of those industries, but in a slightly non-traditional manner. How can they leverage that to perhaps improve their skill set, better their outcomes?
These questions. I think I can speak a little bit from my own experience of pivoting. I think what I was able to do is, of course, I got into digital as a platform, and Instagram flat lays were the thing, which, by the way, today you post one and nobody's going to engage with one. But I think there I was able to kind of merge my experience of being a publicist, having spoken to media. I translated that into speaking with a BuzzFeed or a Scoop Poop at the time that were, super successful, to try and do something what we had termed as native advertising, where we were trying to talk about books without really talking about books. So we were getting into that content marketing space very early on in like 2017, 2018, when it just started. We'd done some videos with filter copy. We were trying to break stereotypes with, showing a boy as a reader rather than women being portrayed as readers in the country all the time. So I think there, what I was able to grasp is just translating whatever experience I have right now in terms of like whether it was just cold media calls trying to pitch a book, doing that similarly to pitching a book, or pitching an idea, pitching my creativity to a lot of these firms that otherwise hadn't even looked at publishing as a way of marketing books. Marketing books was very limited to just media, interviews, book launches, and we had just kind of tried to integrate augmented reality at that point. You could scan a cover and whatnot. So I think whatever job you're in right now, if it's publishing or it's media adjacent or traditional, I think there are those pockets where you think that, simple things like, even if you're in sales, for example, I think what I did as creator management, and I came to you, Arjun, to convince you to post on LinkedIn, was very salesy of me. So if somebody's coming from a sales background, can automatically go do partner management at YouTube or Meta or any of these firms that have a lot of these relationships with creators and brands, and you know they treat every creator as like their account which they have to manage. So I think you just have to find the parallels between two JDs. And more often than not, you don't even realize that you have done that work in some other form or in practice. So for me, that was author management translating to creator management, that if I can take care of lots of authors and their needs, I can also take care of a creator on LinkedIn and what their needs may be. So I think drawing those parallels really helped me out. I think if your question is that how can people who are in the traditional media space, the second part of your question, and how can they leverage content and community, I think Piali summed it up in the sense that I don't think I can add more to it, that it has to be authentic. Because if you're just going by the sheer volume of content, just posting constantly, I think you kind of you kind of lose authenticity there at that cost. Now, when it comes to content creation, I think my first step is like I've always been a huge proponent of the fact that you must post when there is value. If you're really going to just keep promoting yourself or promoting, like if I tomorrow went and I said, "Oh, I have been on this prestigious panel with Piali and Arjun, and how great, how good of me, or how lucky I am to be here," people are going to
Are
be
you
like,
saying you're not going to do that, Vaishnavi?
"No, I will, but I will do it. I will do it with a tweak. I will talk about the conversations we've had today, so that people who couldn't attend it in real time can actually take away something." And I think that brands and even a lot of creators or people who don't think that they're creators, but they have voices which could influence, or key opinion leaders, talk about their own achievements. Either they get into this space of like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about my achievements because that's showing off," or they
Hmm.
talk about their achievements without really giving a takeaway. So that's the pivot, as being the keyword, is what I would make when it comes to like engaging with authenticity on these platforms. Creating community, I think, like even when I was at Penguin, when I started the Instagram account back in the day, I never looked at it from a point of view that, oh, I need to get 100K followers just because I want followers. It was always with the idea somewhere in the back of my mind that I need to get people who read together into one space to discuss books. And I think if that is something that you can lead with, then you have to be open to negative feedback. You have to be open to constructive feedback as well. It can't just be whitewashing your image. If you've done badly, like Lululemon, for example, was a PR nightmare. And Piali, I would love to know what your thoughts on it were. On the side, we should catch up at some point. But to tell you tell your customers that, hey, listen, you're not wearing my product right, versus actually taking the feedback and doing something about it, is I think is I think a clear example of what not to do to other brands and other industries
I
of
think it
like,
was the founder that said that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I think there that feedback needs to come in. I think it's a buzzword, but you can't, like, community sometimes is like now thrown at you like a buzzword recently, but it's almost like you can't hack it. It just can't be hacked. Like, I think people who come together in communities are intrinsically motivated by their passion for it. And then you have to take the honest opinion, honest feedback, honest review, either way, this side or that side. And I think a lot of brands sort of shy away from it. When we speak to brands about like, okay, no, come engage on Reddit, do an AMA, do other things, they're a bit shy of
Right.
that. Because, I mean, of course, I'm sure they have their reasons, but I think if you go with like, if you do this and I will get that as a very transactional principle of building a community, it is bound to fail. I think it'll do more harm than good to try and hack it. I don't know if I answered your question correctly,
Yeah, no,
but
I think a lot of it was directly aligned. At some things might be a little indirect, but I do think that you covered a lot of the good points that we are looking for. Um, Piali, the question I have next for you is probably one of the most common questions that content marketers get in general, and we at Pivot get from folks who are trying to transition to content marketing or grow their career, which is, what are perhaps the number one or number two strategies that have worked really well in the last 1 or 2 years within the space of content marketing? Are there any repeatable frameworks or systems or processes around building successful content marketing strategies? I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can. I can. So you're saying for people who want
Okay,
to
great.
this question, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So you're saying this question is for people who want to pivot.
Not necessarily only them. I would say even folks who are, let's say, spending a lot, have already spent a decent amount of time in content marketing. Even they are finding it challenging to kind of create more differentiated, successful strategies. because everybody is using AI, it's getting very crowded out there. So if you could share maybe anything that has worked well for you in the last, especially in the last 1 or 2 years since AI, some sort of a strategy, some sort of repeatable process or system in content marketing. If you could share that, perhaps using an example, that
Yeah,
would be
sure.
really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is, and it's not even a hack. I mean, it's really the basic that you've got to be relevant to your audience, right? Now, if you look at a senior living brand, and that's the example that I would take, considering you're saying it's in the past 1 or 2 years, and I'd go back in time, that audience behaves very differently from any other generation that most brands are actually talking to. In fact, most brands are not talking to seniors, right? And so you're really operating in a niche, and that is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that you are able to then sort of really kind of get their attention, because there isn't so much out there for them. But the bad thing also is that you don't really have a reference point that you can really kind of look at and say that, hey, I want to be like that brand globally, for instance, right? Because there aren't that many reference points, really, right? Of great brands talking to seniors in a very meaningful way. I think that when you do, whether it's a campaign, whether it's, well, I will take the example of a campaign. When you do the campaign with 2 to 3 sort of, I would say, what should I say, filters that you sort of look at when you're conceiving the campaign, at that stage itself. Number one, as I said earlier as well, are we being true to who we are as a brand, right? Every brand has a certain set of guardrails. Every brand has spaces that they want to get into. So for example, as a brand, Coca-Cola would get into the space of, let's say, music, right? Wrangler would get into the space of rock music and so on and so forth. So is this a space that I want to get into, and is it my space to belong to? Number two, am I being relevant to my audience, and am I caring really only about my audience, as opposed to, hey, do I want to cast a wider net and kind of go viral, right? Because then you're not you can't be everything to everyone. That's the point, right? You've got to be something really meaningful to some people, and only then would you sort of crack it. I think that to me is super important, particularly when you have a very, very well defined audience, right? And a lot of brands do have, I mean, unless you're a large sort of, either a consumer tech brand or like an FMCG brand, a lot of brands do have very well defined audiences. And so you've got to be something to that audience. And number three, is it really a beautiful human story? Because human stories, I mean, stories that touch human lives, are even today the most powerful thing, right? So a couple of years ago, and I remember, AI had already come in, and this was like towards the end of my stint, 2 years ago, I would say, towards the end of my stint at Columbia Pacific. The campaign that we worked on was basically built on the insight that seniors in India are extremely susceptible to all kinds of online scams, right? That's one generation that is the most susceptible. All of us are, but that's one generation that's the most, right? And that vulnerability is something that we understood very much, because we spoke to seniors, and often it was not just the seniors, but also their children, who would be constantly worried about, I hope dad doesn't get robbed or mom doesn't get robbed, because they don't really understand what to do when a phone call comes, and an OTP would be shared, and a bank account is going to get exhausted. We built on that, and we created a campaign that actually we had a senior celebrity kind of back that, and it was basically to empower seniors with knowledge and with exposure, right, to ensure that they were not getting scammed anymore, right? So we partnered with Karnataka Bank, which is about 100 years old, obviously comes with huge amount of credibility here in the south of India, and we got them on board to come and teach seniors what the latest scams are, because the scams keep changing, right, every now and then, to make them aware that these scams actually exist, and tomorrow you could get a phone call that would be about something, and how do you really sort of protect yourself from that, right? Now, when you think about content from an insight perspective, when you have a very, very powerful insight, which is coming from a very strong understanding of your consumer and your consumer behavior, and then you turn that into a very, powerful story. I think that, to me, by and large, is like a winning formula. It's not really about whether or not you have a celebrity. I mean, of course, that helps if it is a larger campaign and you want to have that sort of an impact and so on. It's not really so much about how much budget you have. That it always helps to have a handsome budget. But if it is insight based, that comes from very, very clear, sort of either a pain point or a very typical behavior, which then gets translated into a story which is relevant, but which is also about making a difference or saying something which is important, and then you're able to also distribute it correctly, right? I think that, to me, is by and large, I would say, not a formula, but yeah, maybe decent route to follow. Yeah.
Yeah, more like a, I think, timeless, tried and tested framework
Yeah, it's
is
like a
what it sounds
playbook. I
like.
mean, to me today, that is a playbook.
Playbook,
If you ask me this question maybe a year from now, that may have changed.
yeah,
And I'm thinking it will probably change. Maybe something else will come up. But today, I think, that's more or less the playbook. That's
sure.
that's worked for me at least.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think one theme that's sort of coming out here is that there is no shortcut. There are no real hacks
There
when
is
you
no
think about
shortcut.
your
And I will
content.
tell you this. I did mention, let me just quickly add this one. I did mention that we got a celebrity on board to sort of do
Mhm.
that. And typically we would do these annual campaigns, on the occasion of World Senior Citizens Day. And we will always, because it was the largest campaign of the year, we would always have a celebrity to come
Right,
and partner. Now, even for a brand to convince a celebrity, and in this case it was Poonam Dhillon, um, to come on board to support something like that, because you're looking at a generation of celebrities who are also not really so kind of exposed in that sense,
right.
is hard work. Is hard work.
Sure,
They will partner only if they see real value in the message that they're disseminating, and they're being brought on board to sort of disseminate, because they also want to connect with something which is meaningful and something which takes their personal brand forward, right? So
right,
yes, it is 100% hard work. There is a lot of insight mining. I personally am a little old school that way. I still believe in insights, and I think there is no replacement for that. No AI in the world can sort of give you customer insight that comes from having conversations with your
right,
customers on a daily basis. And I think that remains critical, and that remains important. Research remains important, and then the insight that you get can then be converted into a beautiful story
sure,
through, obviously, creativity, which could be a mix of AI and human. But it's also about how you tell that story and remain relevant to your audience,
right.
and be
So,
something important to
yeah,
a section of people, as opposed to trying to be everything to everyone, which never really works. Yeah.
right. Yeah, no, I think the authenticity of your messaging remains, I think, at the core of a lot of content campaigns.
Yeah.
Vaishnavi, before the next question, I just want to point out to the audience here, we have some messages already from folks like Nancy, Varsha, Aishwarya. We'll be taking up your questions very shortly, so please do share your questions in the chat section. We do want to hear from you, and we'll be taking up whatever questions have already been put up. There are some others that were shared previously before the start of the session, but do introduce yourself, ask your questions. This is the best time to get direct feedback and insights from people who are in the field, in the trenches, working on similar things as you. Vaishnavi, my question to you is, one of the things that we have seen in community careers is that a lot of people are doing it for the first time, even if they are experienced marketers. Okay. They may have done many other things, like, content is something they might have done for a long time, but community is sort of a first trial for many of the folks. So if you can help us, similar to how Piali sort of built a traditional playbook, so to speak, that helps people get off the ground and content, what is that playbook or some system, some approach that you feel can help people get started in building communities, and especially, I would say, small to mid-sized companies, if that is something that you can help with, because a lot of the folks who come to us are not working at very traditional large companies where there are a lot of resources, but rather slightly smaller mid-sized companies.
Fantastic question. I think the one thing that I missed also speaking about is that we actually think that being a moderator on Reddit is actually learning a skill of like managing a big community, managing conflict, managing diverse opinions on the same subject and other things. So I think I mean, I also think like anybody can start that if they're passionate about a subject. So like a lot of people that I know are like passionate about Garmin watches. So they are mods of a Garmin community, or they're nerding out on aviation. So they have their interest. So it's almost like you can really show up authentically on the platform without really like curating yourself, which you would like on other platforms. So I think that's one thing about like how can you get started. But to talk about the reverse as to how somebody who's working for a brand can start, I think the principles are pretty much the same, right? Like what are we talk what do you want to intend to do out of this? A lot of tweaking of the content creation needs to happen. So it can't just be that, oh, I'm posting this trailer on YouTube, so let me also post it here, let me also post it there. And a lot of times what people end up doing is treating other platforms as almost driving traffic to another. And what harms them is that without context, nobody really wants to click on that link and go away. And then platforms get the bad rep of like, oh, you're not, showing my content in the feed because it has a link, and then all of these, myths and stereotypes that come up as must be the platform's fault. But nobody really comes and checks that why am I posting this, with what purpose? Do you want to have this conversation right here about the teaser that you're launching, or do you want to get more views on YouTube? You probably have to choose which CTA you want to go with. And you can direct people to different links. I have seen a lot of people post interview links on platforms across, but when they give a little bit more of context as to why they're posting that link or why should anybody even spend more time reading it, I've seen that the CTR on that is much higher. So I think just making it's difficult to find people to go to other links and things like that. And brands usually, in my experience, get a little bit caught up with the fact that, okay, I don't know what to post, I don't know where to start. And our goal really for them is to just use Reddit as a place where you can actually get real time feedback, get people talking about it, and you don't have to create a separate content pillar for Reddit or any other platform or any community you're creating, right? Like even if it's on Instagram, I don't think that you need to necessarily drown yourself in like different pieces of content just because AI has made your life easier and you can actually have the sheer volume of it. I many times I worked with even Neeraj Chopra's team one time to just show them that whatever you're posting on Twitter can actually live on LinkedIn if you just tweaked it this way or you just shared some insights this way. So wherever you're wanting to create a community, I think just make sure that you have what do you call? I think like you have to have empathy and not performative. I think you also need to know what you're wanting to do, why people are there, what problem are you solving, and what do you want out of it? Do you want just eyeballs on your campaign, or do you really want to know what people are thinking? And that two-way communication ends up happening not as much. And
Mhm.
we are so focused, even as a content person, when myself, we were so focused on one to many communication so many times that I think the many to many communication was just not something
Mm.
that we thought about. And it's very new. It's definitely very new to all of us. Even as a role, community management is super new. And it means different things for different companies. For some people, it's creator management. And for some brands, it's actually making sure that community builders have the right tools, the right space to create what they're passionate about and find the like-minded people to indulge in those conversations and actually discuss things. So I think it's not difficult. I think it's just one of those switches you have to kind of switch on. Like, okay, if this is going on Instagram, I could potentially post it on Reddit, but like maybe I'll have to have a different caption for it or a different take on it. And then be okay with whatever people are saying. Like, and take that back as like almost like user research, right? Like it's almost the real reality, which otherwise people won't tell you, which you would not hear. And
Yeah.
I think brands are somehow like in the US showing up really well. Like there are AMAs with their actors on Reddit, where actors are, really jumping in themselves to do these AMAs, really answering people's burning questions. Piali
Mhm.
was a big one. AMAs and Reddit started with Barack Obama when he was campaigning for president the first
Right.
time around. So a lot of brands, Universal, I think even Nike is doing very well in the US. So there are lots of these case studies where brands have actually embrace the fact that having people talk about us and bringing that you know, credibility on ground is very important. And I think that's what we need to go with. Sometimes I speak to a few brand managers and they're just like very looking for quick rewards. That's not going to happen.
Mm,
Definitely a very slow burn, in my opinion,
right,
creating a community from
right.
scratch.
I think that was comprehensive and pointed. So thanks for sharing that. I do want to get to some of the questions that we have gotten from the audience here. So one of the questions we have is from Varsha. I'm actually going to show it on the screen. So Varsha's question is more on the lines of earlier part of our discussion around content creation. So the question is, what do you suggest from your experience? Where do we draw a line of how to make the best use of leveraging AI? Because it has been very easy to content over the last couple of years, but it sounds robotic. I think we did cover it at a high level, but Piali, I would love to get your thoughts on this one. Um, Perhaps you could re-emphasize some of the points, or if there are any new things that you feel could directly address Varsha's question, that would be helpful.
Right. You see, AI is not always right. I mean, I've had several instances in the last couple of months of using AI where we've had very strange kind of output come out. And you see,
Hmm.
one of the downsides of having the volume that comes with AI, or the expectation of the volume that comes with AI, is that you are then not able to manually check each and everything that AI is producing. You are assuming that because it is AI, and because at the end of the day it is intelligence, whether artificial or not, it is intelligence.
Hmm.
It is going to, I will feed in a prompt and I will get something which is usable, right? Some of the times it's actually not usable, right? So I think my first piece of advice is that you've still got to put in that work, right? To check. You've still got to check each and every piece of content that you're creating, either at a production level, for example, if it is a large campaign, or let's say, if it is just a creative, you've got to check, right? And it's about, I think, finding a midway of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, and then testing out also what is working better. So I think testing then becomes very, very important. So for example, as a team, if 100% of your content is getting generated by AI today, then I would be a little worried then, because then there is no scope left for you to, put human creativity at test anymore and really figure out what's working better. I mean, we've done print ads using AI and completely using AI, and, tested that out against creatives made manually. And we often, because of how much of iteration has gone into prompting,
Hmm.
right? We've actually found that, the ad that is generated through AI is perform better than the ad that was generated by, let's say, a creative team, right?
Hmm.
But then it also means that you are then investing significant amount of time in sharpening it and resharpening it, and kind of being at it till you're able to extract the kind of quality that you would be happy with. It's really about, first, not lowering the bar at all just because it's AI, and second, being super vigilant about the output, because AI does. I mean, we have had instances where we have seen, images that have been created by image first tools, right?
Hmm.
Where people's hands and legs have gone missing, right? Or additional limbs have been given to people. Now, this, when you're reviewing, for example, from a marketing standpoint, or a brand manager reviewing, or a senior person reviewing, whoever it is, and particularly for senior folks who are very time poor, can be quite exhausting, right? To review, at any given point in time on a
Yeah.
daily basis, to review maybe 30 creatives, right? Is
Yeah.
exhausting, right? But you've got to be at it. I don't think AI today has reached that level where it is error free. There is a significant amount of hazard hallucination that does happen, and we are seeing that, and you've got to be sort of mindful of that. The second thing is, and I will bring this into conversation, Maybe because I feel like this is relevant. I don't know if it directly answers this question. If it doesn't, I apologize in advance. But we all have seen this now new way, and I think Vaishnavi will have a perspective on this, which is probably more relevant than mine. We've seen the this article that's gone viral about the first social media platform that's been built for AI agents, right? Where AI agents are talking to sort of talking to each
Right.
other. Now that's a closed sort of platform where human beings are not allowed, right? AI bots created by human beings are allowed. That's pretty much what's happening in other platforms as well. That's the point. The point is that it's about you know so for example, on a LinkedIn, I know this for a fact, somebody would write an AI generated article, and then the response to that article is also going to be AI generated. So it's basically two AI bots having a conversation posted by human beings, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that, to me, I don't know if I'm happy or sad about it. I think it's something to really think about, and where we are headed with this and so on. But somewhere, I think some level of rationalizing the level of usage also, I think, is
Yeah.
important, right? I mean, I think that human touch still is important, still is very required, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you can't compromise on that while using AI only and only as a tool. It's meant to be a tool. It's not meant to take over your personality. Whether you're an
Right.
individual, a personal brand that's posting on LinkedIn, and you shouldn't really be generating. I mean, you can sure use it as a tool, but it can't be 100% AI generated content, because then it's not you,
Yeah.
right? And then the person commenting on it, and I know this LinkedIn is now
Mhm.
flooded by it. Like, if I were to use Quillbot to do an AI check, I'm sure a lot of the content that's on my feed
We'll
is
have
going
a
to be
lot.
100% AI,
Such an
right?
interesting point,
Yeah.
Piali. I think I spend decent amount of time on LinkedIn, and I have noticed that. I'm sure Vaishnavi, I mean, you worked at LinkedIn, you must have noticed it too. I do, yeah, I'm just cognizant of time. We don't have a lot of time left, and we got a couple of more questions to cover, just two more. Um, we have one from Afreen. I'm going to show that as well here. Vaishnavi, this one, I would love to have you take it because I know you have worked at LinkedIn previously and helped creators um, like myself. What do you think about this? So, what's the real scope of LinkedIn brand collaborations? How do you track ROI when you are a content creator?
Fabulous question. I think I'm glad that brand and content creator are two separate things, because LinkedIn marketing solutions works very differently, right? Like in terms of the CPCs and other things. But having said that, both teams would tell you the same thing, that one like on LinkedIn probably is equals to 10 Instagram likes or 20 Instagram likes. And I didn't say this, and LinkedIn wouldn't say it, but Nusair, like Nas Daily, actually said that in one of the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator programs, that he was very like the value of a LinkedIn like is much more, because it's much more um, there's a lot of thought behind it, because everybody's really themselves. They're not hiding behind a username. And there's a lot of like real estate to give, because the moment I like something, it shows up in the feed of all my connections. So the moment I engage with something, it's also like reflecting on me, and people are very careful about what they engage with. So I
Mhm.
think that's one thing that I would like to tell you. But also, the real scope on LinkedIn will never be mass reach. It's not supposed to reach millions. I think our editor in chief, Dan Roth, used to say this, and it always stuck with me, that on LinkedIn, if your something is going viral, we're actually worried about it, because you have not found your reach, or your niche. Like, not reach, you have not found your niche. If you are going viral, we'd actually be concerned that what is it that's happening. So I think, like, every time I would go to a creator, I would talk about, like, doesn't matter if you have 5,000, 10,000, 16,000, or just don't chase the numbers so much. Chase, like, who did it reach? LinkedIn Premium is able to tell you what kind of audiences are viewing your profile as a content creator, and you can actually define your entire strategy, your content strategy, depending on who is actually interested in viewing your profile. If it's early career starters, then maybe you tailor your content towards that demographic. If it's leadership, then you maybe are in that space where you're helping leaders out with their executive communication or the next step that they want to take. So I think you have to just remember that it's very like it's entering a boardroom with people, and you have to make an elevator pitch every single time you post. So it's never going to be mass reach that like it is otherwise. And collaborations on LinkedIn will always work when they're additive to the person's personality. So it's
Mm.
never going to be like, oh, get me 100 creators on LinkedIn to talk about my product. But if I tomorrow start talking about fitness, nobody's going to buy that product from me, because people who know me, they'll just be like, Vaishnavi's been paid to post about whey protein. But if you went to, let's say, a Luke Coutinho, that's more likely to get you the right eyeballs, because the people who are following him for who he is. So that's what LinkedIn is about. I would treat LinkedIn as something super targeted, and it can get you the results in a very different way. The numbers might look small, but the impact of those numbers are much better than the volume you'll get anywhere else.
Absolutely. No, very well said. I think we are almost there towards the close of this session. Just before we wrap up, I have one rapid fire question for both of you. Um, this is again one of the most common things that we are asked. I'm sure people who are here would probably want to know more deeper thoughts from you. So you can reach out to Vaishnavi and Piali on our platform on Pivot. You can check out their profiles by going to mypivot.work. But the question is, um, top three skills that hiring managers and recruiters in content and community are looking for when they make hiring decisions, especially at mid-career level. Mid-career meaning anywhere between, let's say, 5 years to 10 years or maximum 15 years kind of experience. So according to you, just top three skills, rapid fire. I'll give you maybe 10 seconds to think about it. But then, Piali, perhaps if you could share your thoughts first, and then we'll have Vaishnavi go as well.
Yeah, so I'll go. So number one, curiosity. You've got to be curious. That's super important. You've just got to be curious about the world and what's happening, even if it is or not directly related to what you do, the industry that
Yeah,
you operate in. It's always nice to have a wider perspective on things, because everything ultimately is 6 degrees of separation and is all related, right? Number two, I think, is hustle, right? I mean, if you're attracting Gen Z audience, you can say hustle. If you're attracting older people like me, but you said mid level, so I'm guessing more Gen Z. It's hustle. I mean, nothing beats that, right? You've got to be a doer. It is really about bias for action. If I were to quote Amazon principles, but it's really about like you said, getting into the red trenches and getting things done. So execution is important. It's not just about having great ideas. How well you execute is as important, or actually more important, than the ideas. And number three, I would say, is you know um, a a keen understanding of how different platforms work. And that, I think, increasingly again is becoming a non-negotiable. But also I find that very few people have that understanding of how different platforms actually work. And to also understand what new platforms are bringing to the table,
right.
in terms of starting communities. So for example, if I were to start a Reddit, or if I were to start a WhatsApp channel, how should I be operating there, as opposed to what my existing platforms are? So yeah.
What are the rules of the game there? I love it. I love it, Piali. All three really, really relevant points: curiosity, hustle, and keen understanding of different platforms. Vaishnavi, your thoughts?
Yes. I think for me, first thing that comes up is thoughtfulness. And what I mean by thoughtfulness is like, how are you thinking before acting, right? Like that little gut feeling is very important in community. I think where that little tingle tells you that this doesn't seem right, this might like not land well, or you're taking insights from what has happened before, and actually before saying anything, you're slowing down a little bit just to course correct yourself. I think that's very important to me, just to take a moment to think, because we're so consumer facing when it comes to creators, when it comes to community builders, that we are now thinking that if we say the wrong thing or it lands badly, it's not going to have the right effects, right? Even as a Penguin employee, I was thinking in the content space that if I said something from the Penguin handle and it became a controversy, I was in trouble, right? So you just to pause, is it right to even talk about this book, even if the moment is about Afghanistan, but is the right time to talk about a travelogue? So I think thoughtfulness is really important to me. I think judgment would be the other one. And what I mean by judgment is pretty much like, are you reading the data correctly? Are you not reading the data in isolation? Sometimes what happens is data can tell you whatever you want to see sometimes if you read it in isolation. And quantitative and qualitative data sets both have to meet as a community professional to form the decision that you make after thinking. So I think judgment would be the second thing. And empathy. You can't work with people without empathy. If your job is entirely centered on emotions, the passion, the intrinsic motivation of people, you can't do that without empathy. So I think those are the three things that I would really focus on when I'm looking forward to hiring like a community manager.
Fantastic. Very people centric. Obviously, I mean, I'm not surprised given the role that you've been in, but I'm glad to hear those things in the age of AI. I mean, that was the topic. And I think a lot of the skills both of you shared are so intrinsic to human nature. So I'm really, really glad that there was a, concurrence around that point. Thank you once again to both of you for showing up today and really sharing a wealth of experience and insights with our audience. For those who joined us, really appreciate you spending time away from work or family or whatever you were planning to do instead and joined us. I hope you got something that you can take away, not just as a theoretical point, but really something that you can apply practically in your day to day. Do reach out to Vaishnavi and Piali on our platforms if you think they could be further helpful to you. Today, thanks again, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you,
Thanks
Arjun.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arjun. Great being on this panel with Vaishnavi. Thank
My
you. Have a good one.
Lovely meeting you. See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.